there are now reports of, I think, a third person infected with the bird flu, H1N5, is it? And that there is reason to believe this was not from contact directly with an animal, that it was either through, maybe raw milk or through contact with a human being. And I know that there's some reports coming out of Canada as well that what can you tell us about this and the potential implications of having somebody who does not believe I don't know how much he believed, frankly, in COVID as a real sort of threat to people, despite the fact that, 1.5 million people die in this country. But give me your assessment, both of what we're seeing in the past week or two in the bird flu and the implications of having someone like Bobby Kennedy at the head of HHS at that point.
Well, first of all, we know he has sort of bizarre views on COVID being sort of a plot to spare Chinese Nazi Jews. So really, Bobby? The other piece of this is that, we had a once in a century pandemic with COVID-19 and bird flu H5N1 appearance in livestock and other kinds of animals across the U.S. is pretty concerning. It's spreading widely across herds and other sources of sort of animal infection. As you said, we're starting to see some people who have said they had no contact with farm animals and have had the disease. We don't see any proof that the virus has just figured out how to jump from person to person. That would be an extremely worrisome development. That being said, we're seeing it show up in pigs where recombination is common and passing from animal species to animal species. So we don't want to get to that threshold where we start seeing 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 human-to-human cases in which no animal contact has been reported. We haven't seen that yet. But what do you do if we have an outbreak of H5N1 in the U.S.? Are we going to be prepared to deal with this in the context of an HHS, which is run by people who have no relevant expertise? Take the controversies and the conspiracies off the table. Bobby Kennedy has no expertise in dealing with these issues, nor do many of the people he's putting into posts that President Trump is reputedly putting into posts across the sort of federal bureaucracy in terms of health.
And so I just the Canadian the teenager, I don't know if you're familiar with that over the past I guess day or two, we're not at a strain that could go human to human yet. Is that, I just want to.
Yeah, no, when that happens, you'll hear all about it, right? People are worried about the kinds of mutations they're seeing in the virus. They're worried about the sort of persistent spread in animals. You don't want to give a virus time to replicate and develop mutations over and over and over again, moving from species to species. It starts to develop a breadth of affinity for different receptors in different species, and we don't want to be in the situation where it finally figures out how to jump from human to human. The point is, we're not prepared. Even during to be fair to the incoming administration, the current administration has not sort of dealt with what's happening with the requisite outbreak. We've unable to get a handle on how many herds are infected, how many animals are infected, what's going on in our communities, because we can't do the active surveillance that's necessary to document what's going on.
How, from your perspective, has there been any serious attempt or success at sort of reinvigorating the system? I know that when Trump got in, he downgraded, a position that would have alerted him to what was happening with COVID-19 earlier. I know that there were sort of like CDC outposts that were in China that were shut down as part of this. Has there been any reinvigoration of this system in the event that we end up having 2 once in 100-year pandemics within less than 100 years?
The short answer is no. Basically at the end of the public health emergencies a couple of years ago, all the money that was flowing to health departments to do sort of extraordinary activities in the context of COVID-19 are gone, right? And it's not like the U.S. Congress has ever really given CDC, which sends most of its money out to local and state health departments, the kind of funding it needs to do its job. It's been beaten up by politicians on both sides. And so we're in a situation where you could make the case that local and state health departments, our federal public health bureaucracy, is weaker than it was in 2019 when it was weak to begin with. So we've had attrition of talented staff from many of these agencies, both at the state and local and federal level. And so I'm really, really worried that, God forbid we see something else happen. And it doesn't have to be H5N1. It could be something we aren't even sort of thinking about right now happen over the next 4 years. We'll be in trouble. But in general, our health in the United States is terrible. We're 44th in life expectancy compared to other countries around the world. It's getting worse. We're down to 60th on that list by 2040. And so it's not just these sort of once in a lifetime events we have to worry about. We need to lift up the health of all Americans, and the way RFK Jr. talks about it is not going to help us get to that goal.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any type of recognition of a structural problem in the way that we deliver healthcare. It all seems to be sort of like a weird whack-a-mole, depending on, I don't know, what's on Coast to Coast that night or something. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that show still exists. Gregg Gonsalves, Associate Professor of Epidemiology at Yale University. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we won't have to call on you again to give an update on anything that appears to be problematic outside of, the insanity we'll see from a RFK at HHS, if that happens.
I hope not. Let's cross our fingers.
Yes. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.